start the recording. Okay, I've got my recording ready. Gonna make it full screen. And here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the current running BigMacDaddy podcast, Video Game Anatomies thingamajig. We've got some great more guests tonight. I'm joined again by my cousin, Gedrek by Marty, who's the blue
Hello.
Discord screen here on the right. At the bottom is the guy, the South African president, holding the +4 card. You will find his Nazi cow, who is also joining tonight.
How's it going?
And on the way right side, I think showing off his Destiny exotic weapon vault is Sid Crackers. So he's also joining us tonight. Hello, everyone. So we're going to be starting, and the topic of today is the save point, or the concept of saving in gaming, or just the concept of somehow storing progress in a game. So, as you can imagine, that's a very basic concept for gaming. It's like almost literally fundamental, almost standard. Like, you can't have a game if you can't save a game, like these days. But, of course, as gaming works, there was a time way back when saving didn't exist, or should I put it this way, saving didn't need to exist. Now, if we try to think off the top of our head, what age or like period of gaming do you think is probably the most logical place we expect? No, we don't need to save games here. No, it doesn't need to. Like, which period of gaming you think is the most logical one for that?
I'd say probably the old retro games where it's like almost one-shot games. So if you think about the Metroidvania levels, you play one level from start to go, start to end, and it's only about 5 minutes long. So there's no need to save within there, I guess.
That's one good branch off the Metroidvania games, and some games like Metroid and stuff in general, the old ones especially, they didn't really have saves. And then when I think the levels got longer, it had a really weird concept of saves. It had you, because all the saving was done on your RAM, and obviously if you know your RAM, that's volatile. So once you switch off that computer or something, RAM goes bye-bye, and there goes your memory and your save as well. So you store a huge long character password, which if you entered when you could get back into the game, it could reload your save. But that was only done in the later Metroids and stuff like that, and it wasn't very popular, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
cool. Yeah?
It doesn't sound good because, I mean, you have to scribble down a 30-character password to remember your saved game, and if you reload the save game, you're probably just going to complete the game. So what was the point of, memorizing this 30-long character thing to put in on my PC or whatever? It's a really weird term, but that's one of the ones, definitely. Natsika mentioned a important one. There's an even bigger market, or even bigger time period in gaming, even more than that, where we didn't really have saves. And I think the biggest giveaway is if I tell you these were games that you don't get at home. This wasn't home console games.
So like arcade games.
Arcade games. Arcade games had no reason for saving, because, I mean, what are they? There's no point in saving. Like, arcade games, the whole plot of arcade games is there wasn't really a narrative or something. There wasn't really a coherent plot or something to explain around the game. There wasn't I don't think you really get almost any arcade games that even give you a tutorial. It's just like you throw that coin in and you play. That's literally what it was. And yeah, at that point in the 70s especially, there wasn't really saving for arcade games. You just kind of played your arcade game and it's a simple, fun little experience, and you play a coin, put your coin in, and you play that game. And then at a point they started to realize, you know what, maybe there was a kind of compelling thing to start saving games. Maybe there was some sort of progress that you as a player wanted to save. Maybe there was something that you could work towards or earn as a benchmark, kind of, to benchmark what you've done in the game. And that's when arcade games thought of the very simple thing. Well, we don't really have narratives or plots still. We're still like these very simple games, and we still do very simple things. But what we can save with the player is one thing that puts the name at the top of a list, or somewhere on the list, and that is the high score. That was one of the first recorded instances of saving in a game. And that was back in the 70s. Do you want to try and guess which arcade game did the high score first? It's a very famous arcade game, I'll give it that.
Was it the Space Invaders?
Yeah, it was Space Invaders. Space Invaders. Very first one, 1978. First one to ever save a high score. I hope you didn't Google that.
I did not.
Well, it was a very good guess, so I applaud you for that. But yeah, it was trying to show completion or something, and I think for arcade games that got them off the hook pretty easy because that's all they could do. And I mean, what else could they do? They could have just saved your high score. The only thing you had to worry about as a player is if someone scores below you on the rankings and they're very spiteful. So like the rankings would read Greg, and then just below it is a massive wiener. That's the only problem you could get if you're scoring high scores and stuff. But obviously that doesn't fly for the games that we had at the time, the home console games. As John Henry or Natikal mentioned, home console games at that point were very short, very simplistic games, and there was literally you could finish the game in one sitting. So at that point they just didn't feel like, well, what's the point of saving? What's there really to do or really to record if you're just going to sit there, complete it in 1 second? We don't have to go complex with our design and development. We can just have you finish our simplistic game and you can be over it. But then as games grew and became more complicated, however, that did have an effect on it. But still, it wasn't still expected by the kind of gaming public for saves to be. Even their stance on saving was kind of a weird stance to take. I mean, one of the first console games, or not console games, I think it was a PC game rather. It was a text-style action adventure-based game called Zork, which, if you do know Zork, it's one of the most let me put it this way, it's put in the game canon, which is a literal public domain library which says this is one of the most important gaming innovations of all time. Zork is in there along with its trilogy. It's a very, very important game in terms of its impact on the whole thing we have now. So Zork was one of the first games to implement a save game feature on PC. It was with the idea that you could have all this replayability and playability where you can play over the course of a few weeks and you can experience the whole adventure and you don't have to rush, the immersion. Because at this point, because a lot of the games in the beginning started to have this whole Dungeons and Dragons type of setting, because tabletop games really is what propelled us to become video games and all that. But this whole Dungeons and Dragons stuff, they tried to get your imagination going, they tried to get the immersion going, and they felt like one setting isn't enough for that anymore. We had to have multiple settings. They had to have save game. Now, remember what I told you about the gaming public, the weird stance they had? This is literally verbatim. I'm going to quote in verbatim here what a reviewer magazine Byte said regarding the save game feature. Some cowards will use it to retain their hard-earned position in a game. They thought it was cowardly to save.
You believe that?
They thought you were a coward to save. How dare you have a normal life and a job and you have to sleep 8 hours a day? You cretin! Frickin'.
Only real men and women play permadeath.
Exactly.
What is this?
Yes.
What is this? Exactly. You want to save? Go frickin' find a save somewhere else. Go make your own game. Don't give us that problem. But yeah.
Get grandma to save for you.
Exactly. So I think that was the one thing. Obviously, we also talked about the volatile memory here. If you only have volatile memory, there's only a very limited set of ways you could actually restore a save of the game. And we mentioned the passwords weren't a very popular thing. You only really saw that on the old Atari machines, which obviously isn't around anymore. Rest in peace, Atari. But yeah.
And to think how much of a bother it would have been just to type in that password on an old Atari machine.
Yeah,
it's not as if we can do a quick on the keyboard. It's a on-screen fucking controller, move about. Nope. Let's do that.
No. It was something then. But then obviously we got some nice technical innovations finally in the 1980s, which took things for a turn for the better, I think, for gaming. Especially, I don't think gaming would have survived very long if we didn't figure out saving. Because, I mean, once you are able to save progress in a game, you allow someone replayability, you allow someone to take breaks, and you allow someone to feel that immersion seep in. Let them just take everything in. Because if you try, just to be honest, in the sense of speedrunning, if you speedrun a game, how much of it do you really remember? Except exactly what you need to do to speedrun the game. because
you only remember
0 basically.
Oh, sorry, Dylan. Yeah, you only remember the core mechanics of the game, the bare bones, the minimum. None of the fluff or the nice, meaty, juicy storyline or lore, or you don't even see the background of the game. Didn't the old speed runs and the old Doom literally look at the ground to generate as little and few pixels as possible so the game can run as fast as it can to complete a speed run? You don't even look at the game.
Yeah, now imagine like you're not even looking at all the design of the monsters, you're not even looking at the dungeon or the level, you're not looking at like anything really. You just so you don't want that in your games. You really wanted to capture that immersion, capture that interest, and capture that like kind of almost it's an almost childlike wonder you start to get for games. And I mean, if you saving a game really helped towards that. It invokes a lot of feelings in you saving a game, and I think it invokes a lot of like it's a almost kind of relief, like, oh, I saved, now I can go do something else and let my brain soak everything in. But yeah, that's
just like you said, it invokes feelings. By giving you time to stew about it, it gives you time to imagine and to think. It gives you time while you're at work. You're thinking, okay, I'm going to beat this level in this way and this way and this way. So when you get back to it, you're actually excited. It builds up the excitement.
I think it does. I did want to move on to 80s, but I did forget about one question I wanted to do. Circling back quickly to the high score saving thing. Did any of you ever manage to get a high score on an arcade game before?
I have.
Have you?
I did in the basketball. It's like I'm a more like newer one, but it's the like technically an arcade game. It was the basketball throw thing.
Oh, I remember that one. The one that like like the hoop one, and then like it has that kind of scoreboard. I think that counts up in hundreds or something. The one that goes to the
yes,
I remember. Were you the guy who stood over the edge and like just dropped the ball into it while someone was feeding you balls?
No, it was when I was still in high school and we were playing basketball pretty much every day.
Okay.
So I was actually pretty good at shooting hoops.
No, we tried to beat the high school because like I would stand like lean over the platform because the thing was relatively short and someone would just feed me balls. But then after a while, your arms got so tired of just doing that. Like we couldn't keep up. But it was funny. It was funny to try.
Yeah, and I got a high score of like 1,000 and something.
Not too shabby, Dylan.
Anyone else that managed to get a high score?
Oh no, not at all. I think.
So no one.
Did you get a high score, Marty?
Well, I was second on a type of, let's say, mixture of Pac-Man.
Oh, you should have typed if you could type a name for high score, you should have called it Izawina. So the guy in first place is Izawina.
Yes.
You should have done that. Like it was an opportunity.
That's true.
But yeah, going back to the 80s now. The 80s did roll out. We actually got a lot of help from the 80s because things did take it twice. First off, temporary memory or like volatile memory was kind of a thing of the past. We got stuff like floppy disks. We got more internal hard drives. We got more technology, which allowed us to save this, or non-volatile memory. Let's put it that way. Non-volatile memory, which doesn't go away the moment I switch off my PC, my console, my cartridge, my whatever. Before we get to that though, there was a temporary non-volatile save, which some games started to implement, but I bet you will never guess which type of genre did this for the first time. It surprised me when I read up about this because I was like, really, that genre? Like, why would they be the first people to invent that? But anyway, it was the roguelike genre. So if you don't know what the roguelike genre is, the roguelike genre is the same gaming genre that isn't as very popular anymore or doesn't really exist anymore. But the roguelike genre is the same genre who gave us permadeath. And they were the first people to invent a save feature that wasn't around yet. So basically, they did have permadeath. The roguelike genre basically works like this. It is procedurally generated dungeons crafted with a very basic and simple D&D narrative. So you choose your character. It's like a half-orc, a human, an elf, whatever. and you fight in this procedurally generated dungeon against monsters, and there was permadeath. That is literally what a game of roguelike genre, the core is. That's the core of it, always. It's always permadeath, it's always procedurally generated dungeons, it's always a Dungeons and Dragons narrative. However, the game Moria... Yeah?
Oh no, sorry. Please continue, because you're heading in the way my question is going.
So this game called Moria, which obviously was an inspiration of Lord of the Rings, the whole game was about the mines of Moria. This game Moria was one of the first who decided, right, we do have permadeath, but what if the player exits the game? Because, I mean, that's not the same as dying, technically. Now, as I said, they decided, right, the person's going to exit the game. I can't really work with... there was nothing of the sort ever invented, like checkpoints or save points and stuff as yet. But they decided, if he exits the game, we're literally just going to cut off from the point where he is currently. We're going to count that as a save. And when he comes back, he's gonna start exactly where he exited from. And that was one of the first times capture of progress was made in a game. Although if you did die, it still killed your save. No matter what, it still killed your save. It's just that if you exit without dying, you technically could save your game. Which was cool.
That is pretty cool.
That was like just weird. I mean, why would the permadeath genre be the one to think of that? God. So that was one of the things that helped with that. It was a little blip, however, as I mentioned, the roguelike genre wasn't a very popular genre. It was extremely niche, and it had like a very I mean, you can think about it. It's a pretty narrow genre to go into because you only have so much you can do with all that features and stuff. But as I mentioned before, we did have the hardware coming. We did have floppy disks. We had internal hard drives coming. And I was going to ask Marty what a floppy disk looks like, but he proved to me that he does know what a floppy disk looks like. So I'm impressed.
Indeed, yes.
You do know what
I have a full pack of them, 16 of them somewhere, but I don't know where.
We will use them at some point. We will make floppy disk saves for you on your computer at some point.
Thank you.
We will physically store them away into a cabinet. Imagine that in the olden days. You had your floppy disk, you had a label on it whatever, let's say you're a music artist, track 1, it's like on your floppy disk, put it in my cabinet away. Track 2, put it in my cabinet away. You pull up the cabinet, you pull it up in the cabinet to you're a recording artist. Here's my whole album. What's that? Look at my mixtape, all big pack of them here. That must have been so weird. So also talking about the non-volatile save stuff, console games. Finally, console games made a huge stride in the 1980s as well. We have some big thanks to give to Sid Cracker's favorite gaming franchise, The Legend of Zelda. Also along with Kirby's Adventure.
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda did something really, really, really huge for this genre. It introduced a battery-backed RAM onto a cartridge, which would allow you to save the game at any point, and it was a manual thing that the player could do at any time they want to. They could save the game. It would be stored on this battery-backed RAM on the cartridge. You could switch the cartridge back on, and your save will still be there. One of the first times ever that's done for consoles. That was in 1986. The Legend of Zelda. There was some other ones. So Pop and Chips, which is kind of like Pop and Chips was a very simplistic, almost like Mario Bros. So just to notify, not Super Mario Bros. Mario Bros. I think in 1983 and Pop and Chips 1985 were more or less the same game. It was like this kind of big screen, limited screen with ladders and stuff you can climb up and platforms and stuff you can jump around, and you have to kill as many enemies as you do. And it's like one of the classic screens where if I take my finger and I go whoop, and then the finger goes whoop around the other side of the screen. That's it was one of those it was a classic game kind of like that. But Pop and Chips were actually the first ones to do this. They were they used a AA battery. Imagine that. A AA battery contained the first console saved game ever in the history of gaming. That's kind of weird to think about it in that way.
Imagine
you're losing that battery.
Imagine you leave it there on the counter. Your mum or your sister walks by, grabs the battery, put it in like fucking TV remote or something.
Yeah.
You get back, you're like,
Where's my
"Done!"
save? Where's my save game? And they're like tuning a channel. Like, why is the channel not working? That would have been such a weird thing.
Go
but
through
yeah.
all the remotes in the house, finding that specific battery.
Yeah. So that worked for some games, like as we said, that narratives were more complex, becoming more complex in games, and like the games itself were becoming longer stretches of things. You couldn't do it in one setting anymore. So the saving anywhere function was useful at some point, but as we all know, the 1980s were a very, very specific period in gaming. We saw a lot of platformers come out of this period. Now, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense for a platformer to introduce a save anywhere option. You'd kind of defeat the purpose of the challenge. Like, if you allow me to save anywhere in a platformer, I can save up to any point, and I can just save up to the like nitpick of progress that I made into it. So that doesn't logically make sense for a genre like that. You want to have this kind of automatic designated point during a level which will allow the saving of a game and which you can revert back to if you were to die in a platform. There's obviously only one word we know that as now, and we get to know that as the checkpoint. Now, checkpoint, obviously, that's a very difficult concept to talk about. Checkpoints are kind of, how do we say, a very gray area in gaming. Even currently, they were already a gray area back then, and they're probably an even more gray area right now because of how games evolved. Also, let's just get first off initial feelings. Checkpoints. Do we like them? Do we not like them? Checkpoints compared to like save points and other stuff.
It all depends on what game we play. Mm-hmm. I am ecstatic and happy to see that checkpoint save logo in the bottom right-hand corner of any horror game I'm playing. I know I don't have to feel the fear of walking around again. I've made it this far.
Please, like yeah, I remember the first relief. If you play Left 4 Dead as well, I think you get safe houses or stuff that like counts as an automatic checkpoint, and the level would load right after I think you enter the safe house.
Yeah.
And it would be like a relief, like everyone run to the safe house, the zombie horde's behind us, run, just run. And then you just run and get in there, like, oh, we're safe. Woo! Finally.
Yeah. I like the fact that they ensure you that your progress is going to be saved in a certain time.
It's kind of like a promise. Like they say, like, you cross this point and you'll never restart behind this point unless obviously you die. I think in platformers, if you die, you have to restart the level regardless, obviously. But still, it did give you something to cheer about. So yeah, we did.
But on the well, sorry, just to get back to like, I've just got a negative point of that as well, or a negative experience from checkpoints popping up. I remember while playing Red Dead Redemption 2, while doing the bank heist, and as you ran up and you progressed through the whole level, Lenny, the one character, gets shot and he dies. And I thought I could save him for some reason.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, so I literally...
For a 4-year-old game. But okay,
sorry, guys. Spoiler alert. I thought I could save him, so I thought, might as well just reload the last checkpoint, and then I can like go through that whole process again. And would you know that I replayed that whole level, I think about 20 to 30 minutes, 4 times, trying to save one character.
You couldn't, so you realized that was like put in the game as part of the script. Oh gosh.
So, like, because, like you said, checkpoints, they're used to for the pacing of a game.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that you've completed this part of the level.
Yeah.
So there, in that instance, it was a bit of a negative for me.
It was a bit of a negative, and we're gonna get into a lot of that. So that was obviously some of the mashing questions. The first massive question, obviously, in the 1980s, we didn't really get to that point yet. We were just focusing on our very simple, very basic platformers things. But the first thing they did ask is, should checkpoints be visible, yes or no? There were arguing points for both. Visible checkpoints allow the players to immediately recognize what it is, immediately know that's a checkpoint, and try to work towards that, because that means they have somewhere in the level that they could fall back on, especially on something like that. There's something like, it kind of also gives them more a sense of completion to know that there's a checkpoint, like, oh, I've made it, like, this part of the level at least is done, and it's just this part. It gives almost some sort of measurable completion. And that was something they tried to say. But obviously with that, if you create some work for yourself, if you make checkpoints visible, that means you do have to put it into a tutorial. That means you do have to have some sort of design team or level design of something look at that and say, where would checkpoints make sense in a platform? You can't just have them anywhere or everywhere. Obviously, you need to play to your strengths here with the checkpoints. The other side, obviously, being should checkpoints be invisible? Some sort of smart system is out there trying to invisibly puts checkpoints down and records it once you pass them, but you can't see them. And maybe in that sense, the immersion is kept better because a look of a checkpoint is almost always game-like. It's almost like, in gaming, you realize that fine kind of balance they hold between immersion and it's just a game. It's really difficult to hold that for a lot of games. Obviously, I'm just going to throw out an example there. Uncharted, really great immersive experience, but no human being is a bullet sponge. You can't be a bullet sponge. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. So we know that. And once you get hit by a lot of bullets like that, either by bad gameplay or you're just getting shot a lot, you kind of lose a little bit of that immersion because you feel like, okay, there's no way I would survive that, but hey ho, here I am. So that was one of the things.
Wondering why this generic phone always pops up throughout the whole city, and you've moved from one side to the other side. Why is it always a yellow phone?
Why?
Something like that.
So the checkpoints that was a very careful decision they needed to make with checkpoints. Did they want to be invisible? Maybe keep the immersion, maybe make it automatic, keep the experience going. Do you want to make it visible so the players can immediately recognize that's a checkpoint, I know where I'm working towards, I know how much completion I have on this level, wada. And there are obviously some games that have really hit the home run when it comes to visible checkpoints in games. And there are some visible checkpoints in games, especially in this time period. Do you guys know any really famous checkpoints, something that this resembles a checkpoint in a game? Is there really any famous ones you can think about?
Famous or just life-saving ones?
Well, I mean, if you I don't know what the checkpoint. I don't know if Zelda had checkpoints or if it was just normal saving. But for example, I'll give an example. Mario has the pipes. You knew there was a checkpoint when you saw the pipes or the flag, at least. You knew there was a checkpoint. So you immediately recognized it. So is there anything else in other games that okay, we know that's a checkpoint?
The bonfire or the campfire in Dark Souls.
Okay, that's a save point. We're gonna get back to that one. That's a save point,
okay,
not a checkpoint.
What about the dog paws in Last of Us?
The
Kind of like dog paws, if I'm correct.
So Last of Us does have checkpoints, but they're invisible. They are more geared towards they wanted to keep it invisible because of immersion. The only real visible checkpoints we still have in gaming is mostly obviously platformers, because platformers thrive on, giving you some sort of measurable thing. I'll give you another one. Crash Bandicoot. They had literal boxes with the letter C on it that you had to break or jump on so that the checkpoint pops out. That was another one. There are quite a few.
More of a
What?
Sorry, just a quick question. More a vague checkpoint. Would you say, per se, when you're playing a semi-open world game or you're moving through a level and you finally walk through a very narrow path for a few seconds, or you go up in an elevator for a few seconds, obviously the game generates a new level or a new room after
that
using
was
that
a
time.
Checkpoint. That was definitely a checkpoint.
Can that be?
Yeah. No, that's definitely one.
Yeah.
So no, there were definitely quite a few. They tried to almost how films try to cleverly jump cut or hide a cut. Obviously, when imagine you passing the camera behind someone's back, their clothing and stuff. That was a very easy cut in film. They do the exact same thing in video games. They do the exact same thing to kind of confirm a checkpoint, allow the system to kind of recalibrate itself, render the level, get all its states ready, but also say, this is a save now, because this guy went up the elevator and that's technically our checkpoints we used. So yeah, that's also walking the line between visible and invisible, because obviously when we see it, we know it's a checkpoint. We definitely know it's a checkpoint. There were also some visual confirmations, obviously, if I just throw it out there. COD has always had visual confirmation of checkpoint. It's not something you saw when you're walking through the campaign, but it literally just says on the screen, checkpoint reached, I think. It always says in the screen, checkpoint reached in COD when you're doing the campaign and stuff. So, like, it gives you that visual kind of confirmation. You've reached the checkpoint. You're now going to be fall back here when you die. And that was that. But yeah, that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. I read a really nice article and I wanted to share a little bit. Checkpoints, because as a concept, checkpoints is something that is extremely hard to pull off, as like we've like talked about it a little. And the whole thing about checkpoints, which makes it so extremely hard, is if you do only checkpoints, for example, in gaming, you're taking control away from the player to do something that's basic. You're telling them, I'm going to be doing the saving here, not you. I'm going to be doing the saving, and I'm going to know what's best for you, not you. And that's the problem, because that's a lot of competing interests and stuff that's going on in gaming. So, like, how do you cater to all of that? There's a lot of factors as well to go in. How does the concept of checkpoints and what checkpoints would functionally do different from a platformer and a classic action game or a shooter? What would you want in a checkpoint, comparing it to Mario and Call of Duty? What should a checkpoint serve you? That's a real thinker, isn't it? So, okay, let's work it around. John Henry had a really good point now about the Red Dead Redemption one. What should a checkpoint absolutely never do? Like, what should a checkpoint never do? Big red flags for them.
Make you replay the whole level if you want a different outcome.
That's a big one. Dylan, it looks like you wanted to say something, unless that's your phone going off.
It's just my phone going off.
Do you know of anything, like, what would you hate if a checkpoint reloads for your save because you died or something? What would you absolutely hate to do all over again? Or happen all over again in a video game?
I remember there was like a sort of thing in Zelda where there was this checkpoint, and every time you'd go back to it, it was like hell on earth. It was like
just difficult for that part of the game, or what?
Yeah, so it was like a really difficult part of the game was just after that checkpoint. But it was sort of, the next checkpoint was so far away that you just kept on going back there.
They left too much space between the two checkpoints. They weren't, like, let's say, almost liberal enough to, like, place more checkpoints in between. So yeah, that's definitely it. Marty, did you have anything? Like, do you know of anything you'd never want to see when you reload a checkpoint?
Oh, of course, just like Henry also said, or Natika also said, I mean, if you reload a checkpoint that you definitely know you saved and you reload before that checkpoint, it would be bad.
I think that as well. Like, I think checkpoints, like, it's because checkpoints always have a set place in the level. It's always fixed, almost always. So, like, it's really difficult because, like, it doesn't determine how far you've been in the level yet. It doesn't determine, like, where you died or how you died. It's just a checkpoint that's here and it's going to reload. For me, and bless the poor old games, they didn't know any better, but it did happen a lot in the olden game. For me, please, when I'm reloading a checkpoint or dying and I'm starting back a checkpoint, don't make me watch the same cutscene again for the 10th time. Please.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Because especially the unskippable ones, you know, there are games that don't have skippable cutscenes, and you think like, oh, please, I've seen this thing. I get it. You're the villain. It's a big twist. And you're going to kill me for the 11th time and have to reload the checkpoint and hear your monologue again. Please, stop. But like I said, it's the old games. They didn't know better at the time. It was like kind of new to them and everything. But there are obviously game franchises out there that do want to make it their proper thing to look after the checkpoints and give the best experience to the player. I'm going to read a little bit here from the article that explores a little bit into exactly what some studios do. So this was a little article talking about like how they process checkpoints, what the approaches to different ones, and what they do kind of believe is the best system in place. This is how the Call of Duty's checkpointing system in its campaign worked a few years back. They had a system that just kept trying to save the game, literally just kept trying to save the game, and it checked a whole bunch of parameters. Are you being targeted? Have you taken any damage? Are you being shot at? Just this whole list of parameters, and when it satisfied them, it said, I'm going to mark this point in history and save all the data. I'm still not going to consider it an official save for the player yet. You had to at least be alive for 5 to 15 more seconds before it actually saved, and that's where you would actually reload in the campaign. But it had this automatic system everywhere in the campaign. Almost everywhere. Not as much in the older games, but in the new ones especially, you would notice it a little bit. But it had those certain like parameters. It always had to fulfill on these parameters. It had to make sure. Obviously, that's a really big one in shooters and action games. You don't want to start a checkpoint when you're in combat already. That would be really tough on you.
No.
Skyrim did that a lot. I think Skyrim allowed you to reload a save, and you were like ready there with your bandits or whatever. You were like, let's go, boys. I can't confirm. Like, I haven't played Skyrim in a while.
Knowing there's an enemy.
Yeah.
Right in front of you.
You would save for some real weird reason. You would save in a dungeon, and like you would reload the save. And the first thing when the save comes up is like, you never should have come here. And it just starts slashing at you.
And then
it would just like start that combat music. That combat music would immediately start. Like, oh no, what's going on? I can't remember. I haven't played this game in like a month. Yeah, I'd say similarly, games like Lara Croft, Uncharted, Last of Us, this is like semi-linear action open world kind of games, like semi-linear type of games where you have multiple routes towards the same kind of destination or place that you needed to go. That allowed their level designers to handcraft the checkpoints and hand place them where they deemed fit after hours of playtesting, quality assurance testing, a lot of user experience feedback. They hand placed them mostly, so they thought that was the best system. You have to go manual. You can't rely on a system. Like, the level designers would know what's best because they obviously also play through a lot, and that's their job description. So that's how most of them go. And so this one says Lara Croft had policies like it will immediately save if you go into a new area, as to not force you to explore an existing area just to go to the new area you just been to. The moment you enter a new area in Lara Croft, it would immediately save you there. Also, obviously, it will prevent any point of a save where Lara was in a combat state. She would not be allowed. There would be no saves allowed during that. So that's just obviously also a very easy fail-safe to trigger. But that also ties into your whole thing, John Andrew, with like, don't make me replay the whole level of the checkpoint. Rather, just sprinkle a checkpoint at least halfway through, at least a quarter of the way through, something like that, just to give me a little bit of a head start. Because, I mean, we did a little bit of stuff. I think Dylan's in the bath because I see his mic's muted. Dylan, you could put your video on. I mean, you could just PG, just cut your face in for the bath. Just like, put it here. But anyway, I do actually remember distinctly the Uncharted and Last of Us games. But it's kind of more Last of Us. Their checkpoints weren't always like like a fixed state. They were kind of like, they were there in the same area, but it was kind of more estimation, and I think that was the handcrafted checkpoints also working there. Like, there were some things like that also I picked up when I played Last of Us, and maybe also Lara Croft and stuff. If you picked up items, and if you like did certain stuff, like let's say picked up items and collectibles and stuff, and you died and you went back to the checkpoint, you'd usually keep those items and collectibles regardless if you collected them before dying. Like, just so you don't have to go through the whole thing again of finding that relic or collectible just because you died. Like, I think they kept that in, and obviously that's a good idea, because I mean, there's no need for me to go collect the whole thing again just because I died. Like, I know where it is. I'm just gonna go there again.
Do the whole puzzle.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the whole thing again anyway if you just don't let me keep it. So it kind of just like, yeah. So that is one. And now, obviously, here's what you've been waiting for, John Henry. The last topic: the save point, the bonfire in Dark Souls. A lot of people do like this concept because it's kind of the whole. It's a cross between a checkpoint, the automatic design thing that we look at, and the kind of visual representation of where we are in level. And it's kind of like the child of this and the save anywhere option, where that's like we're giving almost all the power to the player to be able to save anywhere, and it's kind of merging it into one thing where it's like it's scattered through the level, but it's still manual. You still have to do it, and you can choose where your save point is going to be, depending on your parameters and stuff. So obviously, like Dark Souls, if you were to, for whatever reason, save do the save point 3 areas back, and you decided, nah, I'm not going to do the save points up to here, and you fight the boss and die, you're going to go to the save point 3 areas back, and not there's going to be no help, obviously. So that's the concept of a save point. Now, I'm going to mention I did look up and down quite a lot for this research, and I really tried to find it, but I couldn't find the origin of the save point at all. I couldn't. I looked through so many articles, and no one said oh, this game was the first one to do save points, because there was just no documentation. But I will tell you that there were save points in Resident Evil and Donkey Kong 2. So we know it's somewhere in the 90s. We know it's somewhere in the 90s. I just don't know where. But Resident Evil and Donkey Kong 2 had save points. Speaking about these two specifically, this was also a very interesting implementation of save points. The resource-based version. Something that kind of it will cost you to use the save point. Donkey Kong demanded 2 banana coins, and then you could use a save point, or invoke a save point whenever you wanted to. Even more weirdly kind of than banana coins is that Resident Evil, a horror game based mostly on zombies, wanted you to collect typewriter ink that you could use at a typewriter to save your game. But you had to collect or have typewriter ink in your inventory to be able to save the game. Which, because yes, in a big scary haunted house, I'm going to go tick, 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 tick on my typewriter machine and tell all the people in my diary about, oh my gosh, scary monster today. And that's going to save my game. Weird. People are weird, man.
That would be... Oh, imagine getting there after a really stressful level. And you don't have any typewriter ink.
Yeah. Dear diary. It's like you realize your pen's not working. Dear diary. Oh, no, dear diary today.
Oh.
Yeah. No, they really nailed it down. Imagine that. I'm saying, you had so much tension in Resident Evil, but the thing you're most tense about is, do I have typewriter ink? Am I going to be able to save? Oh, no. But, yeah. So other games, for the sake of giving more liberal choice to the player, sometimes employ a little bit of both. They do have the automatic checkpoints or the autosave in its sense, but they do also still allow you to save point. There is games that do or a little bit of both. I can think of one, obviously GTA, really big game franchise. They did that a lot, especially if you were doing with missions. Not so much with free play. Free play is still up to you to do most of the saving, but let's say, for example, you're doing a campaign mission. There was definitely checkpoints in the campaign mission at points where the whole thing happened, during the heists or during the altercations or during the parts of the missions you had to do. There were definitely set up checkpoints where you can do that. But if you were, for example, in free play and you wanted to save stuff, you literally had to go to the house or the house that you stayed in, and you had to go sleep in your bed to save the game in GTA. I think you remember that mostly, Marty. You were pretty big on GTA V, so it's kind of a weird thing to forget.
I mostly use that mechanic when I try to escape from the cops.
Yeah. It's funny because I've done that so many times. I do the campaigns and I'm thinking about the checkpoints. I'm like, oh, okay, I've got checkpoints and everything. In free play, I get so much stuff and I forget to go sleep in my bed and then I die and I get back nothing. I'm like, oh, where'd all my stuff go? And it was funny. Yeah. Funny enough, the older GTA games, you might remember this, John Henry. The San Andreas, GTA 4, GTA 3, you had to physically drive your car to locations in the city where a floating floppy disk would be, and you had to save your game there.
Yeah, the circle floating.
Oh yeah,
it was San Andreas. Yeah, San Andreas had it as well. I was like, woo, I'm a floating floppy disk, woo, and you had to drive there to save your game. It's so weird. Yeah. It's so weird, but it did that. Actually, the Tomb Raider games also did that. Hey, the Tomb Raider games, I did talk about the checkpoints now and stuff, but the Tomb Raider games also had these campfires that you could go to. When you go to the campfire, it's literally you could save your game there at the campfire. I think it automatically saves your games once you interact with the campfire. And it would there's also where you could rest up, you could heal up, you can craft stuff, you can skill tree, but it was mostly a save point as well. That was kind of interesting for Tomb Raider especially. I don't know. That might also be the only Tomb Raider games I played. I played 2 Tomb Raider games, and I definitely remember the campfire mechanic in it. But yeah. Some games.
A prime example. Oh, sorry. I just want to say a prime example of a combination of all these different save points is No Man's Sky, the space exploration game I'm playing at the moment. You have the ability to save wherever you want, but you need the prerequisite materials to craft a save point, and then you physically have to place a save point and physically save it.
Yeah, it's also resource based.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just another example where like you've got the freedom of everywhere, but you have to have the resources.
And that's kind of interesting as well, because I think that's one of the only, probably the only, like I can't think of anything right now at the top of my head, and I might be wrong, but I think that's probably one of the only ways that an MMORPG saves like that. Because if we are talking technically, No Man's Sky is pretty much an MMORPG, kind of. I mean, you have the privacy of your own worlds in No Man's Sky, but the thing is, like, you are still playing in a massive multiplayer environment where if you go to that hub thing, like you see all the online players there, and it has RPG elements. You have levels, you have accolades, you have health, you have stats, you have a whole narrative. It's RPG definitely, so it's an MMORPG, and it uses resource-based save points. So that's pretty unique.
It is.
So yeah, that's the other thing. Speaking of which, I just want to take a break from the podcast for 1 second to announce this, because Dylan's in the bath and he probably didn't tell you. He rebought a PS4. So he's going to be getting No Man's Sky. He missed his PS4 too much. So now he's going to get... He literally said he's going to get No Man's Sky because he finds it interesting. And it looked really interesting to him, because I was reading to him all the crossplay games and stuff, and No Man's Sky came up. I was like, oh, no way, No Man's Sky is like crossplay. Like, Dylan should join us. And then he went and bought a PS4, and I was like, oh, okay, you can just join us on that. Also, other thing, Chivalry 2 is crossplay. I was gonna say that we need to get Chivalry 2 so bad. Yes, we need to get Chivalry 2 really bad. It's so funny.
It looks really cool.
Okay, now back to the podcast. Back to serious mode.
Back to the podcast.
Yes, some games also has been consciously moving away from save points, and that's obviously because they do want to have more clever ways of doing things. Obviously, save points, manual stuff, it does work for some more games. Like the Souls franchise, I think will never ever really leave the save points, because that's just what logically makes sense. The Souls franchise is probably the modern reincarnation of those roguelike games we talk about. Not permadeath, but very punishing and very D&D like,
punishing
and
part,
very
definitely.
and very just has that still aesthetic of it's dark, it's grim, it's everything, it's so grim. But yeah, that's roguelike. That's just what the roguelike genre was, and I think the Soul games is the modern reincarnation of that. But they have moved away from that through their development.
What are the examples
of?
Oh yeah, sorry. Continue.
No, what?
No. I'm going in the same vein of what you're saying at the moment. So please continue.
So no, the games just wanted to become more clever with more automatic saving methods, or allowing the any save method. It depends on the game you're playing now. Honestly, I'm gonna get to a really good example about this. I just wanted to bring a more to point forward, and it's because we have this growing kind of trend of more dominant popular genres, where the save point would make no sense. So obviously, big genres, I don't know, first-person shooters would not work with a save point. It could be an interesting concept, but it would not work with a save point. Battle Royale would not work with a save point because it's online mostly. No Man's Sky can pull it off, but I don't think you can do that in something like ESO, for example, or the Battle Royale modes, or like any of those modes. I don't think you could pull it off in like anything like that. So you can pull it off in some games, but like I said, it's just easier to allow people to save anywhere, or have the automatic checkpoints and stuff. It's like save points just adds more complication than it hasn't been.
And once you bring in other players in a multiplayer setting, it all depends on where you save, because I'll be able to save at this moment and have these resources, and you save at the same moment but don't have the same resources. So like you have to balance two different games that are actually being played at the same time, and then where's a fair place for both players to save?
So let's just also look at it from a practical standpoint now. I'm going to ask both of you now. What was literally the last game you played with a save point, and excluding the Souls franchise now, because obviously that's a very, very easy one to say. What was the most recent game you've played with a save point mechanic?
Probably Skyrim.
That's any save. That's any save method. That's not save point.
I mean, like save point, you come to a certain point to save there.
No, I mean,
no,
like,
but you need a physical
point in the game
to interact
world.
with.
Yeah. So Skyrim is saving like anywhere. That doesn't count. Like you need a physical object.
Oh, what's the game called? There's literally. I think you visited a
Plague Tale.
Plague Tale, yes. Yes, that's a very good example, Dylan. Plague Tale had it, and it's also had a grim setting and stuff, and you needed to save because it was also a stealth-based game. Very good answer from the top.
The only thing I remember about the game is you come to let's say a white rock or something, and then you just press a certain key and then save. But I can't remember what the game is called.
I think I know what game this is, but I can't remember the game name either. I
It's probably the last game I played with that mechanic.
John Henry, except for Dark Souls, what you got?
Well, I'd say No Man's Sky is the most recent one.
Yeah, you did mention No Man's Sky as well.
I'm really trying to think back in my game library, on what games I played with a physical save point.
And I can't get anything.
Well, even because you'd think having a safe zone where you're safe from enemies would be a save point, but you can still save.
Technically.
Well, like in dangerous zones. I'm thinking about like Dying Light at the moment.
Dying Light is also, but yeah, that's also more safe.
But like that's free save.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really can't think of one off the top of my head like this instant.
So I'm gonna talk about one. Obviously for me, my most recent one will probably be the 2 Tomb Raider games because of the campfires. But my other one, but you have to go back a little bit further because it's been a long time since I played it. But it's also a talking point I want to talk about because of games moving away from the save point to more things that make sense. God of War 3 had save points, but that's because of its classic action beat 'em up style it had. The new God of War does not have save points. That is a save anywhere mechanic. The old God of War had save points. You had to walk to a beam of light physically and save there. And there were checkpoints in God of War. You had checkpoints before the boss fights. You had checkpoints sometimes when you're doing the puzzle room stuff, but there were physical save points you could walk to with a beam of light, and you can like save the game there basically. That was the last one, and I want to talk about also why they moved obviously away from that. And you have to also look again at the style of the game, how drastically they changed. The old God of Wars, beat 'em up style, puzzle style, almost platformer-like game with very arcadey combos you can do on enemies and very arcade-like kind of nuances and stuff. The new God of War, fixed camera, that like very like top-down camera, very like platformer-like. You look at the new God of War, very narrative-driven, very much more nuanced world, much more lived-in world or breathed-in world, and just a lot more character development. And in the way the game plays with almost the third-person perspective right behind the person, and the kind of exploration thing, because God of War isn't open world, it's also semi-linear with like a very heavy exploration-based element. It doesn't really make sense to have save points anymore. Like, you could technically still have it, but it's just easier to make it save anywhere, because the player could be anywhere at any time. They could go exploring, do side quests, they could do actually narrative, and they're just going a different route about the narrative, or the actual campaign, and it's just so hard to keep up. Like, where do we put save points? Like, where does this player want to go at this point in time? Maybe they want to go upgrade the gear with Brock. Maybe they want to go and kill the giant in Jotunheim. Maybe they want to, just drive on the boat with Mimir and hear one of the stories again. It's just so hard to decide. And that's one of the game franchises that now moved from the save point to the any save mechanic, because it just made sense. On the topic though, God of War, do you like the old style or the new style, if you had to pick one? Because it's a big change for a franchise.
It's definitely a big change, and like I'd see each as their own and both together. Because the previous one was like a real arcadey beat 'em up platformer style, and the new one, just like you said, I'm just literally paraphrasing you, is story driven and emotional driven. So, I don't know. I like both of them really.
I think
I
it's fair to
can't
say
really.
both because it's two different
Yeah,
games.
one's not bad and one's not good. It's just it's I wouldn't say a natural development for the game, but definitely a development.
Yeah, Marty,
And then
I can't remember if you played the old one.
I did on PS2.
Oh, okay.
But it was like 2014 now, so yeah.
You prefer new, old, new?
Oh, I didn't really play much back then compared to now in terms of God of War and so on.
I know you like the new one. That's why I'm asking you specifically as well. I know you really like the new one.
Yeah, I would probably prefer the new one, but there's just something about the old ones I still really appreciate.
I think it has its place. I think it's just fun to know that Kratos is this really OP guy, and you can the old game was really let's see how OP is.
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, it's also the graphic content and so on. But I mean, yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. Obviously,
it's all about how the developers shape the game and the way they want you to experience it.
Yeah,
and I think that has a big impact on the save points as well. Because with the old game, they gave you with it not being as narrative driven, with them not crafting a story and wanting you to go down this path, taking your own path while going on the route. They gave you the freedom of saying, "I'll save here," but it would really disrupt the story if you have to go to a specific point and save there in the new game.
Yeah, and it's like it has that immersion breaking as well, because now the immersion breaking is like, oh, I want to go fight this big giant. Oh wait, I gotta go to the save point. That's all the way over there. I'm just gonna be back in like 10 minutes. Just give me a second, giant. I'm coming back now. Oh, I'm saving. Okay, I'm back. Like you're kind of gonna lose that steam momentum of immersion and all that.
Would you guys say?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Off topic, real quick, but still on topic. Would you guys say Minecraft would benefit from a fixed save point, or just the any save?
They have the any save. Remember if you remember the Xbox version, you used to have the autosave like every 30 minutes or something.
Yep.
I think they took it out for very specific reasons because, like, for example, if a creeper, I can't remember if they had any mechanics to like look at this, but I remember like if a mob was to kill you at some point and then the autosave would run right after, it means it saved literally where you died just now. It means like I can't get out of my save now because now I'm like dead when I reload back. And I think they took it out literally because of that.
I think autosave is an optional thing now.
But then what do you do exactly what Nazi was mentioning? What do you do for like online worlds, realms? What are you gonna do with that? Because that's like, again, that's almost a completely online component. It's not just your world on your machine. It's like for a world for everyone.
Any actions you take there is also directed towards other players in your realm or whatever.
Yeah, and anyone can start up a realm, which means the state of the realm must be the same for everyone. You can't just have 10 states of a realm because 10 players are on it and they can all start it. They has to be the same state, which means how do you save it and how do you decide what to do?
That's hard, yeah.
It is hard, and that's generally what it is. I have an entry here from one of my friends. He couldn't unfortunately make this podcast, but Necromancer, he wanted to also mention something regarding, that's a very good name. I know it's a very, very good name.
It is.
But Necromancer wanted to also make a point also about the God of War, especially older God of War with its save point, and how he feels like it impacts. It says, it made the game longer. You could only really save after a level or during a level, like through the semi or the platformer part of it. We generally stopped playing if we knew it would take too long to go to the next level. So, like, if we could save anywhere, we would technically be able to finish the game faster because you can save anywhere and you can put a bookmark on it, and like you can say that's that for me and all that. But if you were to only be able to save after level, we would generally stop playing before level, and that would allow that little immersion to trickle back into you. It would allow, as you said, your brain can soak in everything, and then you can continue the next day or something, and technically the game would take you longer. In some sense. It depends also on the length of the game. But it's a good analogy to make because it does kind of have this you know how it's kind of like it's not suggesting you should do something, but you really should do this. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this podcast. I have one question for all of you, Dylan. If you're in the tub and still listening, this question is also directed towards you. I'm gonna ask you something, and I want you just to forget for a second. Forget about the genre of the game. Forget about the context of the game. Forget about everything. You have to pick one. I have a gun against your head. You have to pick one. Do you pick the checkpoint, the save point, or the save anywhere system for all of gaming? All of gaming will only have one of these options left after this. You have to pick one to keep forever and never be changed.
Marty, which one do you pick?
Well, this is hard.
I know which games he plays, so I kind of think what he's gonna. I kind of think I know what he's gonna pick. So it depends. But let's see.
Okay, well, I do generally like the idea of save points in some cases.
Just to be sure, save points or saving anywhere, because you did say Skyrim had save points.
I mean, wait, did it?
Skyrim did not have save points. That's why I'm asking you. Like, do you have to save anywhere?
Yeah, sorry, I was confused there. So yeah, but I would probably choose the save anywhere.
So you would choose the save anywhere. That makes sense for what you play. So that's why I'm asking. Yeah, like, I knew you were gonna pick that. John Henry, you play a lot of types of games, so this is gonna be really hard for you, isn't it?
Definitely. I'd say solely on gameplay experience and exploiting a game, I'd say save anywhere, because, for instance, like Skyrim, as an example, if you save somewhere and you go in, you buy something, clean out the vendor, and you go out and you reload that save, you'll still have the objects or the items, and the vendor would reset.
Yeah.
So I'd say save anywhere for stuff like that.
So yeah, John Henry is the chaotic neutral in this whole thing, where like he can do anything he wants with this game, and you can't do anything about it because I can save it. So from my pure standpoint, the way I enjoy my games, the way I play my games and enjoy my games, I think I'm going to be really honest here. I think the way that I play my games and stuff that makes sense for me is the checkpoint system. I honestly enjoy it like that, and I honestly enjoy it in that way. Like, I always know more or less where I'm going to start in a game. Like, save anyway is fine for me. The thing is, when I get off a game and I come back on a game and I can't remember where I saved, and I load up my Skyrim save, and I like literally told you, like, you never should have come here. I'm gonna be so dazed and confused because I'm like, whoa, what's happening? I can't remember. Was I in a dungeon or was I not? Where am I? It gets me lost. So I think just for that secure, safe, in like kind of almost environment you find yourself in, and the fact that it's so recognizable, and the fact that like it's been improved so much, I would honestly genuinely pick checkpoints over the three. I don't like save points all as much. Like, I don't like the manual component of going there, save a point. I like it to be done automatic if it's done properly. So I think out of the three, I'm going to choose checkpoints. Dylan,
that's a good soundboard to that.
I'm not sure if Dylan can hear us, but I'm just going to say, Dylan likes save points. Dylan likes save points because he's mad. He's a madman. He's a madman. No. He likes permadeath. He likes permadeath. He doesn't like saving at all. Oh, you can hear me. Hello.
I would very much say checkpoints.
You like checkpoints? Oh, because it's the thingy. He likes his adventure games, so he likes to have the checkpoints.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And it takes out the manual option, so like you don't have to think about saving.
Yeah, it
just saves for you.
Here's the balance of it. Like, obviously, as we mentioned, you don't have to do all the heavy lifting with the saving, and you don't have to remember to save. But it takes away your control and stuff. But like I said, if you do it properly, I'm not even gonna think about the control and stuff. Yeah, I'm not even gonna think about the control you take away and stuff. Like, I've played Last of Us, Uncharted, Tomb Raider before. They do it so well. Like, obviously, yes, I can save in those games whenever I want to, but the checkpoint system's done so well. I kind of feel like I'm not missing out on anything. So if they can do more of that in all of gaming, I'll be fine. I'll really be fine. I won't really worry too much about everything. But
that really speaks a lot about the game, just how it's crafted and how it's put
well
together.
it's crafted, and I like how sound it was as a concept. And obviously, applause to all the level design people out there and all the other system design or whatever people that you've done a massive job. But that is pretty much the end of this podcast episode. Thank you for all my guests for joining. Is there any final thoughts before we close off the Discord?
I think everything should be permadeath from now on.
Permadeath Minecraft hardcore mode on anything. Woo!
Yeah. I think hardcore should be on Bedrock.
But yeah. So
no,
thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and remember, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Goodbye.
Bye.
Adios.